day of Christmas my true love gave to me. Sweet life for sharing, letting go of baggage, motivated passion, order that is balanced, will to determine, true understanding, imagination, power to create, love radiating, wisdom and strength, and the faith that is blessing my way. Woo! Thank you.
Well, I came across a story. We've been talking about the unwrapping our 12 gifts of Christmas, and I really want to thank Leanne for just letting her imagination and power and, to create come through. That was just beautiful to share our 12 divine qualities of spirit. These qualities are, I think, a unique way of understanding the divine nature that comes through humankind that is expressed as the Christ. And it is Jesus who represents the culmination of all of these qualities as the Christ nature. And then also the disciples represent, of course, each one of these different qualities. 12 is a very spiritual number. It is a number that has come through many of the spiritual and mystical teachings. We have the 12 tribes of Israel. We have the 12 of those who are into astrology. We, of course, have the 12 signs of the zodiac. We have 12 calendar months, which actually came out of a lot of these kind of awarenesses and traditions also. So there's something very valuable about 12. The number 12 metaphysically represents a sense of wholeness on all levels. Wholeness on all levels. If you think about the number 12, 12 is 3 fours. 4 is a square, and there's a balance and a harmony to that, and it's on 3 levels, on spirit, soul, and body, on all levels of being. So it's about our wholeness, and it's about learning to express and experience more of our wholeness. And we've talked about these different qualities, and this week we're going to talk about 3 more of these spiritual qualities and how we can step into those and experience them more within ourselves, and then also be able to use those in ways that we can allow the light of the Christ to come through more clearly in our own experiences in life. I came across a wonderful little story about a little boy who came running into his mother shouting, "Mom, I'm 9 feet tall." And her mother looked at him and said, "Well, don't be talking nonsense, young man. What do you mean you're 9 feet tall?" He said, "Really, I'm 9 feet tall. I measured myself." She said, "Well, how did you measure yourself?" "Well, I took my shoe off and I measured myself with my shoe." And there were 9 of them. So I'm 9 feet tall. It's pretty obvious. Well, one of the things that I came across was this understanding that we can't measure ourselves against ourselves. Do you realize that? We can't measure ourselves against ourselves. We can measure ourselves against our potential and our possibility. We can't measure ourselves based upon how we're actually expressing in this moment today. Because, I don't know about you guys, but I think the truth is that none of us are really finished yet. We're already whole, we're already complete in the possibility and the potential of our divine nature. And yet we're continuing to unfold, and we're continuing to grow in our spiritual understanding. We're continuing to grow in our ability to express these divine qualities. And so we can't really measure ourselves by our own shoes at this point. Wouldn't you agree? And yet, we are still in that ability and a process of developing in such a way that we can really show more of the possibilities of light and love and peace and joy and all of these spiritual qualities that we talk about of faith and strength and power and love. And our lives are really filled with amazing opportunities to grow in those areas, in all of these areas in our lives, aren't they? And really a big part of our life is about being in the school of developing these qualities. And we have experiences in life that we draw to us that allow us to practice and to work with some of these unique principles and ideas. we're going to talk a little bit about the divine power that Charles Fillmore talks about of understanding. And understanding, I think, is one of the most significant and valuable ones, and yet it's like all of the others. It only really works in combination with many of the other divine qualities. Wisdom and understanding very much go hand in hand. They're not quite exactly the same thing, because wisdom is the ability to discern and to distinguish between what we're seeing and what we're experiencing, whereas understanding is the ability to go deeper into an awareness of truth. It's the ability to go deeper into an experience of knowing the truth. I came across a wonderful little story that I love. It's a grandfather was, for the holidays, was home visiting with family, with the son and daughter and the grandkids, and went into the bathroom one morning, and the little grandson was there, his 4-year-old grandson, and the grandfather was in, doing his morning prep, and took his dentures out. And the little boy was just fascinated, just eyes popped out as big. I just laughed. He thought that was the funniest thing, just loved it. And he says, "Grandpa, do that again." So Grandpa popped his dentures back in, and next thing he popped out, they were actually false teeth, he pops them out again. The little boy just squealed. "Oh, that was a fun," just laughed and laughed and laughed. And so he popped them back in and did it again. This went on for a few minutes, and finally the little boy says, Grandpa, take off your nose." See, he was looking through the eyes of someone who really didn't know have an understanding of what was going on at that point. Wouldn't you agree? But, sometimes you and I are like that. We have an understanding of things in the world that are based upon the appearances, don't we? We look and we judge and we discern things based upon appearances, and we expect the world to take off its nose, and that's just not the way it is. So part of understanding is beginning to look beyond the appearances and being able to see beyond the physical realm, and to really get a deeper awareness of the spiritual nature of life and the spiritual nature of things. The spiritual nature is allowing us to look beyond what appears to be true and see with an eye of understanding and awareness. But one of the things that came to me is that you and I can never really have understanding of another person. We can never truly have understanding of an experience. We can never really have understanding as long as we are involved in an energy of judgment. The only way to really truly move into understanding, the first step, you might say, into really getting into understanding, is to move into a feeling and a knowing of acceptance. Now, when I talk about acceptance, I'm talking about accepting what is, accepting another. We will never understand another person until we're willing to simply accept them. Do you realize that? We try to understand. We think, but generally what we're doing is we're categorizing and labeling, aren't we? And the moment that we're into categorizing and labeling, we're no longer in the energy of openness and questioning and being willing to learn from. We're no longer curious because we've got them figured out, right? You will never understand anything that you've already got figured out. It's true. Because you've already got it figured out, you'll no longer be in the place of questioning and being open to letting go. So one of the big steps in being able to move into a real awareness of understanding is the ability to let go of what you already know. When we already have outlined who and what and how a person or situation or circumstance or thing is, the truth is we have shut off our ability to really comprehend at a deeper level, to understand at a deeper level, because we've basically put this circumstance and situation into a box of our own creation. So one of the steps that Winifred Wilkinson Housen talks about in being able to step into the energy, the consciousness of understanding is to first have a questioning and a curious mind and heart. To really ask the questions of who and what this is. To really ask for that ability to experience understanding. We don't really have compassion in life unless we have this openness and willingness to understand. Isn't that true? It's really one of the key components of a heart of understanding. I can remember a big turning point in my life was a time before I actually came into Unity. And I remember having some real challenges in different areas of my life. And, for the most part, I was living a pretty good life, but I know I had some challenges. I was having some challenges in some of my relationships. I was having some challenges knowing who I was and what my purpose was. This is back in my 20s, I guess, maybe. And I remember praying about, what is it that I'm here to do and be? I remember having that kind of a prayer time. And I remember going and looking in my Bible, and I did, a very, what we call oftentimes in Unity, I did the lucky dip, the one I'm talking about? Where you just open it up and you point. And it's amazing because I've had done that so many times in my life when I've asked for inspiration and guidance in some way, when I've been able to do that and just gotten some very clear messages. And this is the verse that I came to when I did that. This is 1 Kings, starting with chapter 3. At Gibeon, the Lord appeared to Solomon during the night in a dream, and God said, "Ask for whatever you want me to give you." And Solomon answered, "You have shown great kindness to your servant, my father David, because he was faithful to you and righteous and upright in heart. You have continued this great kindness to him and have given him a son to sit on his throne this very day. Now, O Lord, my God, you have made your servant king in place of my father David. But I am only a little child and do not know how to carry out my duties. Your servant is here among the people you have chosen, a great people, too numerous to count or to number. So give your servant an understanding heart to govern your people and to distinguish between right and wrong, for who is able to govern this great people of yours?" And the Lord was pleased that Solomon had asked for this. And so God said to him, "Since you have asked for this and not for long life or wealth for yourself, nor have asked for the death of your enemies, but for discernment in administering justice, I will do what you have asked. I will give you a wise and understanding and discerning heart, so that there will never have been anyone like you, nor will there ever be. And moreover, I will give you what you have not asked for, both riches and honor, so that in your lifetime you will have known no equal among kings. And if you walk in my ways and obey my statutes and commandments as David your father did, I will give you long life." So when I prayed and asked for some awareness and some guidance, I heard this verse, and I heard very, very clearly the phrase, "Give your servant an understanding heart." And I remember very clearly thinking and praying and listening, and that was a prayer that I had for myself, is to have an understanding of spiritual things, an understanding of spiritual nature, an understanding of the divine. And I'm still praying that prayer, I want you to know. But I want you to understand that things began to shift for me very quickly after that. It was very soon after that that I happened to just stumble into a Unity church, and I happened to discover the writings of Charles Fillmore and the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary, and began to look at the Bible and understand on a different level, in a different way. I began to see the symbolism of the Scriptures and how it represents some aspect of our nature and being. And this began to open up for me in ways that I knew that I was headed in a direction that I was not only going to learn more and grow more in that understanding of the Scripture and how it applies to me in my life, but I was going to have an opportunity to share some of these thoughts and these ideas and these insights. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that I came up with the wisdom of Solomon by any means. But I did open myself for the possibility of understanding on a deeper level. You have that same ability to tap into an understanding of life and of nature and of, yes, your children and your spouse and your boss, but not by rejecting them, but by opening yourselves to asking the questions to understand at a deeper level. And it really begins with acceptance. It really begins with accepting what is and who they are and how they are and where they are, and really wanting to know. Winifred Hausman says that these are steps for moving into this deeper spiritual understanding. First is having a curious and questioning nature and mind. Second is perception, being willing to let go of your current perceptions of who and how and what things are. The third is to let go of your deductions of how things are. You've already figured it out, right? If you've already figured it out, then you no longer are in the process of understanding. And the next one is, she calls prophecy. Your understanding enables you to see answers without consciously thinking it through. It's simply beginning to see the truth of a situation, a circumstance, a person. And then compassion, of course. Is compassion, you cannot really move into an energy of understanding without that consciousness on some level of compassion, and that is tempered by the love quality that is in each of us. And then eventually, she says, we move into a higher order of understanding that she calls just simply illumination. You become illumined to that awareness of the presence of truth, of love, of life, of the power of God in that other person, the circumstance, the situation in life. And you're not trying to get it to be something other than what it is, but you're simply being open to the blessings that are there in the circumstance and situation and person. So this is our quality of understanding. Next quality we want to talk about is one called will. I had a good friend when I was growing up who used to always say, where there is a will, there's a way. Of course, his name was Will. And the thing about will is that we are all in and have the energy of will, which ultimately is the ability to simply choose. It's the ability to choose. What if you didn't have the ability to choose? Sometimes we think we don't have the ability to choose, don't we? That's a choice, I want you to know. It's a choice we've made to believe that. The reality is we always have choice. We always have the ability to choose, to make a decision. The choice that we have, however, really has to do not so much with what I call willfulness, as it really does have to do with a willingness. The word that really resonates for me when it comes to thinking about our faculty, our divine faculty of will, is one of the greatest uses of the faculty of will is not necessarily to make something happen, which, you know, in a lot of self-help teachings, it's just, you know, you just got to use your will. You got to make it happen. You got to make it happen. And there are times I think that may be appropriate, but my suspicion is that oftentimes is us simply trying to get the world to not be the way we think it's supposed to be, right? And so there's a greater quality of will that we can tap into that I find really valuable, and that is the power of simply allowing. Now, when I say allowing, I think oftentimes what we want to do is tune ourselves into allowing even more of our divine nature to come through. We have a tendency to not allow a lot of it to come through. Marianne Williamson says it's our light and not our darkness that we're most afraid of. Sound familiar? You guys know the quote I'm talking about, don't you? Oftentimes, we're more afraid of our beauty, our significance, our power, the gifts that we do have, the beauty that's within us. We're more fearful of allowing those out than we are of the fears that we have in our lives. And so a big part of our work is to simply allow the presence and the power of the Christ nature to come through us in ways that perhaps we had not experienced before or not expressed before. Jesus overcame the human selfish motivations of the will and allowed it to be replaced by a unification with a higher will, a will of that which is, you might say, a universal will, a will of a greater benevolence in life. Maybe perhaps you and I are not going to be in a place where we can simply say, as Jesus did on the cross, "Not my will, but thine be done." I don't know. I'll be honest with you. If I were hanging there, whether I could do that. I'd like to think there's a part of me that would be able to, but I also know that there is a part of me that's very human, that I have a human will, and that will doesn't want that. Does that make sense? And yet, I do feel like when we are willing to turn over our own determinations of things, there's something that works in and through us that's beyond our personalities, that's beyond our ego consciousness, that's beyond our limited awareness of the possibilities in our lives. Every Sunday when we come here, we form a circle, and many of you were a part of our circle this morning. We form a circle and we have a prayer that we say every Sunday. It is not I, but the Spirit of God within that does the work. And I find that when I'm able to do that, when I'm able to step aside and allow that Spirit of God to work, there's something greater that happens than my own little idea of what I think should happen or could happen or is possible. I think many of you have experienced that with us, that there's a greater possibility of good that happens when we are able to get our little selves out of the way and allow something greater to flow in and through us. There was a story about a man who was looking for work and was kind of out of luck and had been looking for weeks and finally decided he had to, just need to take a break from looking. He was, just had to let go and just, decide he wasn't even going to look anymore. So he decided just to go to the zoo for a visit for the day and was going to just enjoy himself at the zoo. And so while he was there, he looked around and the zookeeper just happened to ask if he had any openings. He says, "Well, it just so happens, our gorilla died. And I know we've got a bunch of school kids out for Christmas holidays, and they're going to want to see the gorilla. They're going to be really disappointed if they don't see the gorilla. And I'm wondering if you'd be willing to dress up in this gorilla suit, and I'll pay you $10 an hour just to go in and dress up in this gorilla suit and be the gorilla for these kids, because we don't want to disappoint the kids." The guy said, "Oh, well, okay, all right, I can do that, So he gets in the gorilla suit and he sees the kids showing up and he decides, I'm just going to give these kids the best show they've ever had. I am going to be the best gorilla they ever saw. So he gets up and he's swinging around on the vines and swinging. And next thing you know, he swings over and he winds up swinging all the way over into the lion cage and lands in the lion cage. And he sees the lion coming toward him, and he doesn't know, oh my gosh, he goes up to the gates, and he's just jerking and saying, just yelling, and the kids are all screaming, and the lion's coming closer, and next thing you know, he hears, "Hey, buddy, you better shut up or we're both going to get fired." Where there's a will, there's a way, right? Doors open sometimes in ways that we never imagined possible. Maybe that's one of the ways that it shows up for us. I don't know. I just know that when we are open to the possibilities of a greater good, a greater possibility of good, it tends to show up for us. And then the next spiritual quality we want to talk about is the spiritual quality of order. The unwrapping of this gift, I think, is really a gift in itself when we find ourselves in the place of really aligning with an understanding of divine order. As we say in our prayer group, D-O, D-O, D-O. That's a prayer in itself, divine order. It is a powerful prayer, and it's a prayer that I know many of you have used and really worked with, and there's an understanding behind that prayer that helps us to experience this awareness. In Ecclesiastes 3:1, it says, "To everything there is a season and a time for every purpose under heaven." And in Jeremiah 31:35, it says, "Thus says the Lord, who gives the sun for light by day and the fixed order of the moon and the stars by night." And in St. Mark 4:28, "For the earth causes the seed to yield fruit, and yet first it becomes a blade of grass, then an ear, and at last a full grain in the ear." You see, there is an order in the universe. Even in those times, in those circumstances, in those places where it feels like there is chaos, there is still order. How many of you ever seen or experienced a fractal? You know what I mean by a fractal? A fractal is an amazing image or design that comes out of a formula that appears to be absolutely chaotic, and yet even in the midst of that chaotic random number, you can create these random numbers, and these random numbers you put them together and they will create this amazing image that has a symmetry to it and has an order to it. And so even out of what seems to be randomness evolves order. It's a beautiful understanding and metaphor for what we're talking about here. Oftentimes we think that order means that the salt shaker is here and the peppers, and when we're laying the plates down, the fork has got to go over here and the knife has to go, and we think that is it is a form of order. There's a value in that. But I think our development of the spiritual quality of order is recognizing that if somehow the fork winds up on the wrong side of the plate, that something positive and good is going to come out of that experience. Maybe that seems like a simple analogy. But if we look at sometimes in life, it doesn't look like everything is going the way that we think order should go. You ever had that kind of experience? But really, learning to tap into the quality of order is recognizing that regardless of what's happening, that there is an order to what's happening, and that out of that, something greater will come about. That there's a greater experience that's in process. And so when we can declare the consciousness of divine order, we're not changing any of the circumstances out here. Do you realize that? What we're doing is aligning ourselves with the order that is already present in the universe. We're aligning our awareness and our nature to move into the consciousness of seeing and feeling and experiencing that there is a greater good that is at work, regardless of our ability to see it as order. Does that make sense? So the more we can learn to, as I say, let go and let flow, that flow has an order to it. It has an order beyond our conscious awareness of arranging the circumstances in life. Now, there are times when we are given very clear guidance of how to arrange the circumstances in life, and so when we get that, that's part of the divine order also, so we need to follow that and do our best to put things in that kind of an order. But if it looks like this one piece doesn't seem to want to fit, it's okay. Trust that it's going to fit where it needs to fit. Does that make sense? So the more we can tap into that energy and that feeling of divine order, Richard and Mary Alice DeFola says this. They wrote this wonderful work called The Quest. God, the creator of all, does have a plan for every part of creation. We cannot know specifically what that plan might be. There is really no reason for us to know. What we can be sure of, however, is that there is a divine order to things. By not attempting to predict outcomes, by not fretting about the means of our getting there, we smooth the way for God's plan to reveal itself easily and quickly. Our part is to keep centered on God as the source of all good. And then trust and simply trust. To simply trust. A big part of establishing divine order in our lives is simply trusting that there is this process at work that is for a greater experience and expression of the possibilities of good in life. And so, Wilkinson Hausman gives us some ideas and steps on how we can move into a place of awareness of the divine order within our own nature, that quality of order. First, he says orientation. Orientation. We need to orient ourselves. We oftentimes think we need a compass to do that, and out here in the world, that's what we do. But you know, the truth of the matter is a compass always points in one direction, doesn't it? It always points north. And our true spiritual orientation always points in one direction also, doesn't it? It points in the direction of spirit. It points in the direction of the divine. It points in the direction of good. I love that term pronoia. The universe is conspiring in our favor. And when we align ourselves with that trusting and knowing of that, we will find that even though things don't appear to be as we experience them as good, there's a greater awareness that can come through, and an experience will come through even those challenges and difficulties that we didn't understand perhaps. And a greater good can come about in ways that we didn't believe possible. The next then, of course, is we have to be open to aligning and consenting with that order. We have to be in that flow and move into a place of acceptance and then cooperation with the knowing of something greater happening. The word order also to me implies harmony and balance. That we move into a place of knowing that there is a harmony within us that's beyond the discord of the circumstances and situations. There's a freedom in aligning ourselves with that knowing, with that order. And we can experience that freedom by allowing ourselves to trust that there is something greater at work, even though you and I aren't in charge of it specifically. Right? And so it's the ability and the willingness to let go of that need to be in control. I know I'm kind of quit preaching and gone to meddling for a minute, but but it is that ability to let go and know that there's something higher at work than our limited conception of what's possible. So these three spiritual qualities that we all have within us are there for us to develop and learn and grow from. And this is a wonderful time and season to tap into and practice an openness to a deeper understanding, both of ourselves, of our families, of our world for that matter. And the more we can tune into and make decisions about our own thoughts and feelings and ideas about life, and make the decisions that align us with something greater, a greater order of things, a greater good that's coming about. These are the qualities and characteristics of these spiritual gifts, and I'll tell you, as we open this, man, Christmas becomes even greater for us. We're like little kids unwrapping presents here. And the more we can get excited about that, well, actually, we're going to talk about that next Sunday. Come back. We'll see you then. All right, let's begin and prepare for our meditation time. So I invite you to move into a comfortable place. Just allow a feeling of peace to flow gently in and out of your heart, your mind, your whole being as you breathe in and out. And as you breathe in and out, feel an openness and a willingness to be curious and to question our assumptions, about life, about others, about ourselves even for that matter, and our possibilities. And in your heart, ask of Spirit to have that understanding heart. the heart to understand more deeply, more fully. Through the Christ Spirit within, let your heart be open, receptive, and know that my understanding of truth deepens and directs my life to a greater good. I am open to an understanding heart. I invite you to open your awareness to the divine quality of will and feel an energy of willingness and allowing of a greater good. Willingness to know and experience the blessings of our Christ nature, to make the choices of our thinking, of our feeling, that moves in the direction of light and wholeness, of peace, of well-being. And be open to making a choice to see and feel and experience a greater good. I choose my good based on spiritual understanding. I choose my good based on spiritual understanding. And as I make these choices in life, I know that there is something greater at work. There is a power and an order of things. And I make choices that align with this higher order of possibilities, a higher order of harmony and balance and well-being, a higher order that allows the moon and the stars to move in ways that bring harmony and balance. I invite you to allow yourself to be in harmony and allowance of divine order and declare that divine order in your own physical being, in your relationships, in your circumstances in life, and be open to allowing that divine order to unfold in ways that perhaps you could not have imagined, but are there to bless you. My life is balanced in harmony and in order, and I align myself with an assurance and knowing that all is well. Looking beyond the appearances and trusting and knowing all is well. Take a nice deep breath now. Breathe deeply into that heart space. Just breathe in and out, and another nice deep breath, and let your awareness come into this room, this time, this place. And take another deep breath, and when you're ready, gently open your eyes and give thanks for these beautiful spiritual qualities unfolding. And so it is.